Atrovir.
You're pretty smart, right? Clever, intelligent. You make smart choices. So what car are you sitting in right now? If it's a Skoda, well, you're one of the smartest drivers on the road. And if it's not, we can fix that with one smart decision. Choose a new Skoda from our range right now and get an excellent finance offer. You can even apply online. Drive smarter in a Skoda. Finance provided by way of hire purchase agreement from Volkswagen Financial Services Ireland and subject to lending criteria. Terms and conditions apply. Visit skoda.ie.
Now at Power City, save from €50 to €250 on a Bosch kitchen bundle when you buy 2 or more large Bosch kitchen appliances. For more information, go online to powercity.ie or call in store today.
The Sunday Papers
on Off the Ball.
Now you're very welcome back. So we are going to review the Sunday Papers here on Off the Ball. Very happy to say, here in studio, Gavin Cooney of the 42.ie. Gav, thanks for coming in.
You're very welcome, Joe.
And Mr. Tommy Conlon of the Sunday Independent, you are with us as well. Hello.
Good afternoon, Joe. Good afternoon, Gavin.
Hey, Tommy.
Gents, I'll just run us through the front pages very quickly then. Sunday Independent sports section. It's a picture of Katie Taylor with her gazillion belts, and it says, on top of the world, Katie in line for $1 million payday after seeing off latest challenger. This was her unanimous points decision win last night. So all roads lead to Madison Square Garden in the springtime against Amanda Serrano and a $1 million payday. Beneath that, Jorginho's penalty saved Chelsea's blushes. Penalties all round yesterday for the big teams. Jorginho netting twice here, mentions Andy Hampson. And just one of these things that you wouldn't really know unless it's mentioned. So with Kovacic out and Kante out, Jorginho is playing through a lot of pain at the moment. He has a back problem, and Tom Tuchel saying Jorginho sacrificed himself for many weeks actually, and I was aware that this moment would come when he suffers, because he played Champions League, then he played the Euros with Italy, all the qualifiers in the World Cup for Italy. He had no pre-season, started the Super Cup game, so I knew we would arrive at this point of the season, and he's battling on through. You sort of associated Jorginho with kind of dancing through games effortlessly, but no, he's in a lot of pain at the moment, but still playing. Sunday World then, we have Katie Taylor, Super Katie, still top of the world. Sean McGoldrick there in the top of the Sunday World, and then beside that we have Raheem Sterling. Spot a joke, Premier big hitters all laughing after dodgy Penno wins is the verdict of the Sunday World. We have the Mirror then. Stephen Gerrard back at Anfield. Gerrard's Mo Salah with the winner from the penalty spot, a 1-0 win for Liverpool against Aston Villa. Stephen Gerrard blasted the referee. Stuart Atwell is the lead there in the Sunday Mirror, and Katie Taylor as well with her belts. Now I want Super Serrano, says Katie. So that fight just seemed to be pretty much nailed on for Madison Square Garden in the springtime. Katie's New York state of mind is the Sun. Hamilton and Verstappen also get a mention here. Hamilton is petrified. Well, 20 laps in, things are going very well for Lewis Hamilton thus far over in Abu Dhabi. And then we have Vic in heart scare, alarm as Red Devil star suffers chest pains on pitch. Victor Lindelof suffered worrying heart scare yesterday, says Dan King. Thankfully all seems to be well though. Then The Observer, they have Max Power on their front page. Interestingly, you would think it might be Lewis Hamilton, but it's Max Power. Flying Dutchman grabs pole to set up too close to call desert decider with Hamilton, is the Observer lead. Sunday Times, pictures of Raheem Sterling for Man City scoring the penalty, and then Mo Salah winning the penalty for Liverpool. And then right hand side, maybe an interview we might touch on within, it's Shane Duffy talking to Paul Rowan. Lifestyle change lifted Duffy from rock bottom. So Duffy talking about the various lifestyle changes which has helped him return to top form and beyond. And then Mail on Sunday, Max Power, Verstappen scorches into pole to leave rivals stunned. Again, 20 laps into the race, Hamilton going along very nicely in Abu Dhabi. And then Gerrard waving to the Anfield crowd. Much love but no joy for Stevie G at Anfield. That is where we are. Gents, let's start with the Bryony Frost, Robbie Dunn case, which has run throughout the week and certainly dominated in various quarters. David Walsh is writing about it in the Sunday Times. Tommy Conlon, you're writing about it in the Sunday Independent. The chair of the BHA, Anne-Marie Phelps, writing about it in the Mail on Sunday. So, Gav, you can get the ball rolling here on this one. We'll come to Tommy in a moment, who has been writing about it. David Walsh as well. There is a common thread, I would say, in David and Tommy's piece, which is what does the future hold now for Bryony Frost within the confines of the weighing room?
Yeah, I mean, the story now is
is what happens next and how racing reacts. And I think Tommy might be slightly more pessimistic on Bryony's future in the sport. With the end of his piece, the whistleblower seldom gets to write a Hollywood ending. Frost will pay a big price too. It will be measured out in loneliness, among other punishments. Now, the sport itself are hopeful that fate won't befall Bryony Frost. The Anne-Marie Phelps, who is the chair of the British Horse Racing Authority, has an op-ed in the Mail on Sunday today, and I think this is the crucial piece that we're probably going to, a crucial line that we're probably going to tease out here. She says, at the heart of this lies not what crude and unacceptable language was used, but how these words were used and how others reacted. And I think those last three words are what's crucial here, how others reacted, because like this should be a reckoning for the sport. Like, I mean, Bryony's ordeal within the weighing room was horrifying. Like, in terms of what was said to her, we can't repeat it on radio, but she was found to have been bullied. And I wouldn't be too optimistic on how the sport would change, I have to say, Joe. The Professional Jockeys Association came out with quite a strong statement, shall we say. I'll be generous and say that they were a bit tone deaf on it. They came out, they seized on this word that was used about the atmosphere in the weighing room during the hearings, that it was rancid, and they've rejected that by saying that it's not rancid at all. That would be wrong to label old jockeys like that, and even the language that's used. Like, they use the phrase that Bryony Frost, she felt bullied. That's again kind of putting the emphasis on her rather than the environment that was around her. She felt bullied because she was bullied. We're now looking at, will the weighing room reckon with itself? And that's the tenor of this David Walsh piece. And as David Walsh says, silence can be consent. So while the Professional Jockeys Association will reject the rancid claim by saying, well, not all jockeys acted like Robbie Dunn, and that's fair enough. But did they tell, in Ruby Walsh's words, sit down and shut up? And there wasn't enough of that. So as David Walsh says, silence can be consent. And he rounds it off. The final line of his piece is powerful. It's the weighing room will now be judged on how it judges Frost.
Yeah. David Walsh says at another point, all the while that Dunn was picking on Frost, a lot of otherwise good people were observing in silence. Privately, they may have told Frost to ignore him, but they didn't challenge the wrongdoer, and they didn't take her side. They left her on her own, and then were upset when she lodged an official complaint. Towards the 11th hour, they tried to bring about some kind of resolution, but by then it was too late. Frost had passed the point of no return. And he also, and this speaks to the culture in the weighing room, jockeys said that if the problem between Frost and Dunn had been more serious, they would have intervened. Valets all claiming it was just bickering. Answers so uniformly similar, the witnesses might as well have been prepped by a mafia lawyer, he says. And again, that's to the culture. On your point about the Jockeys Association, because their statement, you're not the only one to describe it as tone deaf, I think, on the announcement of the findings. So they talked about how Bryony Frost had felt bullied, even though an independent panel, let's say in the strongest possible terms,
has been bullied.
She was bullied. So they have been scrambling quite badly. Just listen here. This is Paul Struthers. He's from the Professional Jockeys Association. He's their CEO. So he's been doing the rounds on racing TV in the UK this morning and trying, I think, just about to get to an acceptable level of language. But I mean, just listen to this exchange. This is not, you couldn't say this is 10 out of 10, obviously, in terms of clarity. But this is the very latest from the Jockeys Association. This is Paul Struthers, their CEO, on UK television this morning.
First of all, you hit back with a very strong statement in the immediate aftermath of Robbie Dunn's charges. And at the beginning of the third paragraph, you said, Bryony felt bullied. Do you concede now that Bryony didn't just feel bullied, she was bullied?
Yes, we do accept the disciplinary panel's judgment on that and their decision that she was. The challenge, Nick, and these were really unique circumstances. It's the first time we've had a case like this that has had involving bullying allegations that pitted one member against another, and we have a job to support both. And we had one member making very serious allegations, and and we had another member maintaining their innocence of all bar one of them. So we were trying to find the words that walk that tightrope, and we understand why it has caused the issues that it's had, and that's why we do want to make clear that we do accept the disciplinary panel's finding that Bryony was bullied, and the language used was deeply and grossly inappropriate.
So you're accepting, just for clarity, you're accepting that you were wrong on Thursday to say Bryony felt bullied. You should have said Bryony was bullied. We just clear that up.
I think we certainly accept that we could have phrased it differently. I think as I say, there is that balance, Nick, between the two polar opposite positions of the individuals involved in this case. But yes.
But yes, right at the end.
3 days of tough.
And even then, they're walking a real tightrope in their own minds. That's Paul Struthers, the Professional Jockeys Association, speaking today. Tommy, you were writing about this as well. Vindicated Frost now faces cold shoulder. Whistleblower has won huge battle, but now faces the wrath of her peers. You're right, she's currently basking in the warm glow of public opinion, but the reality is that amongst her peers in the weighing room, the reception will be a lot more wintry for the foreseeable future. She's won a huge battle. Dunn has to pay the price for his horrible conduct, but the whistleblower seldom gets to write a Hollywood ending. Frost will pay a big price too. It will be measured out in loneliness, among other punishments. Like Dunn, she too will have a sentence to serve, and it may last a lot longer than his. So what are you basing that on, Tommy? Why do you think she's due the cold shoulder now for the foreseeable?
Can you picture her, Joe, walking into the weighing room today? I don't know actually if she is racing today. She was yesterday, I think. Can you imagine even just the silence, the kind of that moment we're familiar with, where someone who has antagonized people walks into a room and all heads turn to stare and the babble of conversation just peters out to nothing. It's very easy to picture that happening with her, for starters. She's spoken herself about the loneliness, and in her evidence to the BHA, British Horse Racing Authority's inquiry, she spoke about how she had been ostracised and isolated already. We've also seen the evidence of the Professional Jockeys Association. You've just played some audio from that chap Paul Struthers, the chief executive. And let's face it, we know enough generally how these things operate vis-a-vis whistleblowers in society as well as sport. When someone, to use the phrase that Paul Kimmage made us familiar with, pisses in the soup or spits in the soup, as he did all those years ago in pro cycling. No one, the group, the tribe, doesn't like to have its flaws and its behaviours exposed to public light. And it would seem almost inevitable that Bryony Frost will follow that same fairly grim sort of ritual. And in fact, there was a trainer who was quoted in the Telegraph on Friday, a trainer called Neil King, who said, Bryony's had some very hard times, and one has to feel for her that she may have some more hard times in the weighing room, for being totally honest and standing up for herself. And so the whistleblowers, it tends not to end just with being vindicated in a court of law, where finally their allegations are accepted and proven. They have to go back to their community. They have to go back to the people that they have exposed and embarrassed and shamed, and they have to go back and face their tribe, their people. And it's a horrible place to be. And it doesn't end with vindication. The attrition and the hostility continues very often for many years until the person is some way forced out of that community for one reason or another. So I'd be pessimistic about, at least for the immediate future, of how she will be. She ought to be taken in and embraced and warmly just taken into the kind of taken in, but I don't think that will happen, and I think it's going to be very tough for her.
Well, it will truly be a scandal if in the coming years she is ostracised to the point where she might leave the sport or her form suffers. Louis Weston was the QC for the BHA who were taking the case on Frost's behalf, and he said over the course of the 6-day hearing, there is a weighing room culture that allows one jockey to threaten another with serious injury, or to call another we are on the radio here and it's well before the watershed, so I'll just say or to call another a blank, or a blank. If that's the case, then that culture is one that is sour, rancid, and one that we and one that we say should be thrown out and discarded. Its time, if it ever had its time, has gone. So that was Louis Weston of the BHA. Now, what's striking is that Brian Barker, QC, of the independent panel who made the judgment, it was a 3-person panel listening to all the evidence, and they talked at length about how they found Frost to be a very reliable witness and talked about the evidence. But in his written judgment, he said of the weighing room culture, he said, in reviewing the evidence given and their approach by jockeys of repute as well as the valets, because several jockeys came forward and testified and said, look, what they had seen was not necessarily outlandish. It was par for the course territory in some circumstances. So he says, in terms of the evidence by jockeys of repute as well as by the valets who probably find themselves in a difficult position, we have a real concern that what was referred to by Mr. Weston as the weighing room culture is deep-rooted and coercive, and that in itself it's not conducive to the development of modern-day racing. So that panel have shifted the conversation, not just from to the Robbie Dunn situation, which is there for everybody to see, but to the wider weighing room culture. And they're pretty much saying, we haven't heard things here to suggest that Louis Weston is wrong when he calls it rancid. Now, this has prompted blowback from jockeys everywhere. But could I just ask, Gavin, do you think scales could fall from the eyes here and there could be a realisation amongst the weighing room that, my God, when you see it laid out like this and across the media all week, our self-policing culture is not fit for purpose anymore? We are going to have to change. Bryony, welcome back. Look, we probably didn't appreciate how serious it had got or how far over the line it had got, but we'll watch our P's and Q's a bit more and move into the 21st century. Would you share Tommy's pessimism that that's a remote possibility?
Yeah, I would. Okay. And now, look, I'm not a racing journalist. I don't really know much about the sport. I'm coming to this story by reading what everyone else has read in the newspaper. Sure. But the fact that it's taken the Professional Jockeys Association 3 days, 3 days to clarify that Bryony was bullied rather than she felt bullied would make me think that that is not a representative body ready to look inward and at themselves and at their own behaviour. And like David Walsh is right, you can highlight this line in your newspaper over and over again in David Walsh's piece: silence can be consent. Not everyone has to be acting like Robbie Dunn was deemed to have acted for this atmosphere to be hostile to Bryony Frost or any other female jockey. They merely have to be silent, and that is in itself permissive of the culture which has been exposed here. Bryony Frost has done her sport a great service. People will say that she shouldn't have lifted the veil, she shouldn't have spat in the soup, but I can't think of many other sports people who have done as much for their sport in this calendar year than Bryony Frost has done for horse racing.
Yeah. Tommy, sorry, you were trying to get in there.
Yeah, sorry for jumping in and Joe there. It's just that a lot of the jockeys past and present have jumped on that phrase rancid by Weston, the lawyer, and I actually purposely left it out of my article because, first of all, it is a barrister making his case to the judges, yes. And as barristers frequently do, there'll be a bit of grandstanding, a bit of hyperbole, exaggeration of the position, and it has also given the jockeys, I think, past and present, something to latch on to, that they can credibly latch on to, and it has this sweeping generalisation about a rancid culture in the weighing room. They have latched on to that and resented that I think understandably, because it is such a sweeping generalisation, and it has enabled them slip off the hook of answering the question, what did you do about it?
Yeah, I think that's a very shrewd observation. I think they have heard that and they've said, right, well, that's the line that's over the top, so that's the one we're going to focus on and highlight the unfairness of that. Yeah, I think that's true.
Correct. And I left it out of my article for that. Exactly for that reason. They're slipping off the hook of their own accountability by latching on to that particular phrase by that lawyer. And there's an element with the jockeys, past and present, of see no evil, hear no evil in this too. You know, a lot of denial, the classic symptoms. We've seen this movie before. I think Paul Kimmage was one of the first to kind of educate us on the whole, not just on doping and cycling, but the processes by which whistleblowers are handled. In all walks of life. We've seen it many times in all sorts of institutions in Irish life. Kimmage was a pioneer in that way, really, in terms of education about how communities, subcultures hunker down and resort very easily to denial and paranoia. And we're seeing this classically playing out here as well. And the Professional Jockeys Association in particular. And to the extent that actually in the Racing Post on Friday, the editor of the Racing Post in his comment piece said that the leadership of the PGA should consider their position, given how they've dealt with this.
Yeah, well, they were out scrambling this morning and trying to right that wrong, I think, clearly.
Yeah. But the main thing you would love is that, you'd love to see happening is that Bryony Frost is actually welcomed into the welcomed into the bosom of her sport, because it's not just her sport, it's her community, it's her tribe, her people. And that they just, take her back in and maybe say sorry, and we could have done better, and help us to do better. And, let's move forward together and let no one ever say a bad word or speak ill of her or to her, and throw their arms around her and help her through what I'm no doubt is a very distressing time for her too.
Yeah. Just a last point on all this. Ruby Walsh was on ITV yesterday and the rancid comment was put to him and he said not rancid. That said though, Ruby Walsh said, you have a room full of competitors and rivals. They're not all friends, nor should they be, but they represent the image of the sport and they have to uphold that. There'll be rows, but at times somebody has to tell somebody else to sit down and shut up. That doesn't appear to have happened. That's what went wrong. You have to use words like, I'm sorry. That's part of any altercation. And in sport, that will always happen. But you have to go back and apologise. They're simple words. And then somebody has to reassure the person who was heckled not to worry about it. That's how the weigh-in room should work. But it stopped working, which is the problem. See, that's quite... I think it's a very interesting comment. Because for me, Gav, that in the way Walsh just painted the weigh-in room there, that's how the weigh-in room functioned for a long time, and I'd say functioned okay. Now, I'm not saying everything that happened there was perfect, and I'd say there were bumps along the road and probably behaviour which wouldn't look good laid out in the real world, and a HR expert wouldn't say, well, geez, that was not the way to police things. But I'd say, with a few bumps in the road, it's probably functioned okay in this way for a long time, and in this instance, Walsh is saying, geez, it really didn't function. But this instance may now prompt the end of the functioning because it's failed so badly in this instance is my reading of it.
I think Ruby Walsh distinguished himself with his public comments on this week, certainly compared to what you read from other jockeys, but I don't know much about a weighing room, to be honest, but I would question as to how hospitable an environment it has historically been, because this is not to impinge on Ruby at all, but he is a male, it is his male outlook on these things, and it would naturally be different for a woman. And I think that there's a very good line in Tommy's piece that gives kind of more historical context to this story and to the credit that Bryony Frost had done her sport, because Tommy quotes Gay Kellaway, who is trainer now, but she was the first woman to ride a winner at Royal Ascot. She did that in 1987, and she said that this is 40 years too late. This was what I had to suffer back in the day when I was riding. A lot of lady jockeys kept stum about a lot of things, and she goes on to say, I'm delighted with the verdict. Thank God she had the courage to speak up.
Yeah, saw that comment as well. That jumped out. So Tommy, where was that? Where was she speaking there? That sounded like somebody who was
on TV or she was at a race meeting on Thursday.
Right.
I don't know, was it on ITV or on At the Races, which TV channel it was, but she was there, was I presume one of her horses and she was just asked, the news had broke that afternoon about the verdict, and she was asked for her comments. So as I understand it, those were comments in a television interview on Thursday.
Okay. Well, they are quite striking, aren't they?
I thought so too, yeah.
Fellas, we'll take a break. That's the Bryony Frost, Robbie Dunn coverage. It's across the papers, as you might imagine. We will take a very short break. Lewis Hamilton, I'm sure you're all curious to know, 34 laps in of 58. Lewis Hamilton is going along very nicely. He has a 5.2 second lead over Max Verstappen in second place. 34 laps of 58. We'll take a short break. News headlines. We're back with Tommy Conlon and Gavin Cooney to review the papers.
The Sunday papers
On Off the Ball.
This weekend on News Talk, to celebrate the launch of late-night Christmas shopping at the Crescent Shopping Centre, Limerick, we've got a €500 voucher to give away. To enter, visit newstalk.com/shop. Happy Christmas.
The Hard Shoulder with Kieran Cuddihy.
Most people are reasonable and they'll accept teething problems. What sticks in people's craw and annoys people is a suggestion that 50% of people are no-shows, when it's actually just that the HSE doesn't realise they've already got a booster.
Look, I think the reality of what the Taoiseach was demonstrating the other day, he was presenting some of the data. We do know we have had a period of time where the take-up was not as strong.
The Hard Shoulder with Kieran Cuddihy.
With Nissan.
Weekdays from 4 on News Talk.
Samsung American fridge freezers are packed with style, substance and bags of room, which makes for the ultimate kitchen centrepiece. For more information, go online to powercity.ie.
This Christmas, surprise the one you love with a gift voucher for Lyrath Estate Kilkenny. Make dreams come true by choosing from luxury breaks, relaxing spa treatments, delightful afternoon tea or scrumptious dinners. Or let them choose for themselves with a Lyrath Estate monetary voucher. There's something special for everyone. This year, give the gift of precious moments that make special memories. Unwrap the magic this Christmas. Unwrap the gift of luxury. Visit lyrath.com.
There are knowns and there are unknowns. You know that with BMW you'll find all the style and performance you could wish for. But what might be unknown to you is the brand new BMW iX, the first all-electric SAV from BMW. With a range of up to 613 kilometres and ultra-modern connectivity, get to know the new BMW iX. Search BMW iX or visit your local BMW centre. Range figures are for comparison purposes. The range you achieve under real-life driving conditions will depend on a number of factors.
Make Christmas for everyone at Dunn Stores with our extended opening hours. We know Christmas can be a busy time of year for our customers. From buying gifts for loved ones, to picking up your family Christmas PJs, to selecting your favourite festive food for the main event. To get you organised this Christmas, our stores are now open for longer, so you can get everything you need at a time that suits you. Visit dunstores.com to view our Christmas opening hours for your local store. Dunn Stores. Make Christmas for everyone.
Many families will face impossible choices this Christmas. Please support the St Vincent de Paul annual appeal. Donate locally at svp.ie or call 0818 176 176.
With Free Now, you can keep your work life and social life separate. At least when it comes to your taxis. Just tag your payment methods as either business or personal. Download the Free Now app for freedom on tap. Free Now. Get there your way.
Whatever trip you're making this Christmas, our Plaza Motorway service stations are the perfect pit stop. Quality food in forecourts with Supermax, Papa John's, Super Subs, Beauty's Barista and Spar. Gift vouchers also available. Merry Christmas and safe travels from the Plaza Group. Coming soon to the N17 Plaza in Tuam.
At the Hermitage Clinic, we want all of our patients to have total peace of mind even before they arrive. And arriving at the Hermitage Clinic couldn't be easier. We're located at the junction of the M50 and M4 Galway Road. And for added peace of mind, treatment at the Hermitage Clinic is fully covered by the majority of private healthcare plans. So, if you need world-class medical treatment, ask your GP for a referral to the Hermitage Clinic, a member of the BlackRock Healthcare Group. Visit hermitageclinic.ie.
Bank of Ireland's Begin Together programme supports people and community groups across the country with a vision, passion and drive to make things better.
Here at the Irish Traditional Music Archive, we preserve and share the music, song and dance traditions of Ireland. Thanks to Begin Together, we can help artists breathe new life into these art forms.
Tomorrow will be better if we begin together. Bank of Ireland. Begin.
Air quality has never been more important in the battle against COVID. So what can we do? Welcome to Zen Air, home to some of the most powerful air purifiers today. Powered by Active Pure technology, originally developed by NASA and scientifically proven to kill 99% of airborne COVID in 3 minutes. Zen Air is ideal for schools, offices and retail spaces. Discover more on zenair.ie.
This month at the Guinness Storehouse, experience the excitement of a live gig in the best seats in the house, all from the comfort of your own home. Announcing the only Other Voices concert in Dublin this year, live from the Guinness Storehouse, featuring Bell X1, Maverick Sabre, Pillow Queens and more. Proudly supported by Tourism Ireland. Live online Wednesday, December 15th, 8 p.m. at othervoices.ie. Visit drinkaware.ie.
Now at Power City, get free delivery and free recycling on selected Whirlpool condenser and heat pump dryers. For more information, go online to powercity.ie or call in store today.
Have you been targeted by one of the many text scams doing the rounds?
Are you being ripped off by your service provider?
Or do you just need help finding the best bargains this Christmas? Here at Newstalk, we want to help. Email consumer@newstalk.com and our experts will take on the case to spot digital threats, tackle bad customer service and track down the best deals to save you money.
Get in touch. Email consumer@newstalk.com.
I just saw this pathetic thing sitting in the chair that was after destroying our family. I just wanted to know why.
I'm Frank Graney, host of a new and exclusive Newstalk podcast, Inside the Crime. In episode 3, we'll go inside the interrogation room as 2 of the detectives who investigated the Christmas morning murders of Sharon Whelan and her 2 daughters came face to face with the man they believed to be the killer.
That really did put him in the area, missing for those crucial hours.
That's Inside the Crime, a weekly true crime podcast. Listen and subscribe now on newstalk.com/podcasts or on the Newstalk app. Powered by Go Loud.
Listen live or listen back on the Newstalk app, powered by Go Loud. On 106 to 108 FM, on the Newstalk app, powered by Go Loud, and smart speakers. This is Newstalk.
Good afternoon, it's 2 o'clock. Army veterans say the terms of a state investigation into sexual abuse allegations look like a cover-up. The Women of Honour group says initial proposals, which would have involved them in drafting the inquiry's terms, have been cast aside. They say defence officials have now taken over the process. Diane Byrne, a former Army engineer and a spokeswoman for Women of Honour, says it looks like an exercise in damage control for the military establishment.
If you look back at this country and previous reviews in the past, there's a sense of cover-up in this country. And this, to me, it comes across like another cover-up.
Some COVID walk-in vaccination centres are experiencing wait times of over an hour this afternoon. Clinics in Meath and Galway have even longer delays, with wait times of 120 minutes or more. The HSE has urged people to check its social media channels for details before heading out to a clinic. Fallen trees and power outages are possible across 7 western counties today as 2 yellow wind warnings come into effect from 3 o'clock. The warnings for Donegal, Galway, Leitrim, Mayo and Sligo will be in place until 11 o'clock tonight, while the second yellow wind alert for Clare and Kerry will last until 8 o'clock. Gusts of up to 110 kilometres per hour are expected along coasts and on higher ground. Gardaí say they're concerned over plans to have officers record people's ethnicity and gender when they're stopped for a search. Policing Authority Chairman Bob Collins raised the matter before an Oireachtas committee earlier this week. Garda representative of Association Vice President Brendan O'Connor says while the union isn't necessarily opposed to the move, it could put officers in a difficult position with regards to the issue of race.
Certainly our members aren't comfortable with a situation where it would be the officer would define or categorise someone in relation to their ethnicity, because it is a very personal question.
And the Governor of California says he plans to allow private citizens to sue some gun manufacturers and sellers. It comes after the US Supreme Court allowed a Texas ban on most abortion services to remain active despite a legal case against it. Gavin Newsom says this means states can effectively get around federal courts, which will allow for the new gun control law. It's 2 minutes past 2.
Newstalk weather.
Thanks to Ryanair. This Christmas, give the gift of travel with a Ryanair gift card.
It'll be a cloudy and damp day with strong winds reaching gale force in western and northwestern coastal counties. There will be outbreaks of rain, which will become persistent in the west. Highest temperatures of 11 to 13 degrees. And now up to date on News Talk.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
You're very welcome back. Sunday Papers, Joe Malloy here. Gavin Cooney of the 42 and Tommy Conlon of the Sunday Independent are with us. We have talked about the Bryony Frost, Robbie Dunn case at length there. So lots of other pieces in the paper which caught the eye. A very different interview was on page 8 and 9 of the Sunday Times. It's Lilian Thuram, one of the great players, really one of the great players, a record 142 French Caps World Cup winner. Always came across as deep thinking, intelligent footballer, and his new book, White Thinking, is out. White Thinking is the name of the book, and he's spoken to Jonathan Northcroft, who points out that if you're hoping this book is going to give you the gossip, the behind the scenes gossip around the 1998 World Cup win, this is not the book for you. So I mean, even the piece itself starts off in very interesting light, where Lilian Thuram is curating an exhibition at a museum in Paris in 2019. He co-curated it, and one of the paintings was Beating at 4 Stakes in the Colonies. And Jonathan Northcroft writes, this was a painting Thuram picked out. It's a shocking work depicting a naked black slave face down and staked to the ground, being whipped while his white owner looks on. The owner's terrified infant daughter is comforted by her mother and a black maid, while a black child of similar age is left in the dirt with a dog to witness the horrors of the beating. Now, Thuram says that one of the organisers told him not to show it to children, and this rather proved what he feels was the point of the painting, that the reality of the brutality and subjugation inflicted on black people is not something white people wholly want to face. So Thuram writes in his book, the child in the painting, this is the white child who's upset at the beating happening, the child in the painting is not yet conditioned to the violence of the society in which they live. They want to get away. They're a long way from accepting it. In other words, they're not yet white. They're becoming white. And so that's how this piece jumps off, and Thuram talks at length to Jonathan Northcroft here about various aspects. He certainly celebrates what Marcus Rashford and other English players have done of late. Makes a very interesting point on that, for instance. England is ahead of France in terms of sports stars using their voice, and Thuram says it's come down to cultural legacy. He said French colonialism, he says that had an assimilation policy of telling the colonised that they were French, and it's reflected in policies today. Whereas he says in Britain, it's more acceptable for different identities to be recognised. In France, only the ancient identity of France is recognised, a white identity. So to speak up as a black French player, about your experience as a black player is to almost be cut off from the national community. I congratulate Rashford, Sterling and the other English players. So Gav, not your usual.
No, it's great. I have to say, I found it very, very interesting. I think, though, you quoted the key words there, that the kid who's going to be shocked by this painting is not yet white. They're becoming white. And I think there's a James Baldwin quote that I'm going to paraphrase / slightly mangle, that the existence of the Negro is not a question for the black man, but it's a question for the white man because you created it. And that's effectively the point that Lilian Thuram is making here. That he said he's certainly not the first person to make it, but it's an interesting football figure to make it. Is that racism is a social and political construct rather than anything inherent. And he says he wants to defend the only identity that counts, which is human identity. So it's interesting. It's just interesting to see a footballer. We've in the last couple of years we've been fortunate that we know that footballers will stand up and speak out against discrimination. To have someone like Lilian Thuram diagnose the causes of it in such detail and depth is very, very interesting. And it's also what I also find interesting about it is that he talks like the change can only come from within. From speaking up is going to bring about change is his line. He quotes he references Kaepernick, he references Rashford, Sterling. He also praises the likes of Gareth Southgate and Jordan Henderson. He says when someone who is not a victim recognises the problems, it's harder to dismiss. What white players need to do is to leave the pitch in the face of racist chanting or incidents. And I find that idea that it'll ultimately always come down on the person within the sport. There needs to be disobedience, or civil disobedience is the general phrase within the sport, because Thuram was part of a a French World Cup winning team in 1998, which was heralded as, this is a black, white, Arab team to unite the country.
France.
And then Jean-Marie Le Pen got into the runoffs only shortly after.
Yeah.
And it's still a problem in France. Like they're tripping over each other for far right candidates in the upcoming elections. So I find that interesting as well. Like we can construct grand media narratives about how things change, but it really hasn't, and it will only really change with people sacrificing something and changing from within. We can see it in one context with Bryony Frost. You can see it here with Lilian Thuram. There's a good piece with Lewis Hamilton in the Sunday Indo that touches on a similar topic as well.
Tommy, as I bring you in, I'll also mention the Lewis Hamilton piece. I know the F1 coverage caught your eye when we were talking earlier on WhatsApp. So making an impact on and off the track. This is Lewis Hamilton has become a driving force for good. Tony Evans in the Sunday Independent and the Independent over in the UK. So he's making the point that Hamilton, as the years have gone by, he has really grown a social conscience. As a younger driver, Hamilton sometimes gave the impression that the external world had little to do with him. He was fixated on his own performance, little else. Since then, he's grown significantly as a person and is engaged in issues that resonate away from the track. I suppose most recently, he pitched up in Saudi Arabia and called the homosexuality laws terrifying, wore a rainbow helmet. Evans calls this an antidote to sports washing. He also pointed out that, they may have changed their laws on women driving, but lots of women still in jail for driving. And Evans says, compare this to his teammate, Valtteri Bottas, who said, I can't wait to come back next year, as the main thrust of his interview. And he said as well that, he acknowledged the only obligation of any sports people is to do their job well. They're not required to become role models. And he said, as soon as they stick their head above the parapet, critics queue up to expose any hint of hypocrisy. It takes a brave individual to put their head above the parapet, especially if they are black, and even more so in an overwhelmingly white sport. So there's a bit of a thread there with Thuram and Hamilton, Tommy.
It's hard to get your head around. It was only reading Lewis Hamilton, that piece, and a very good piece by Tony Evans on Lewis Hamilton, and the absolute grotesque irony of Saudi Arabia hosting a car racing competition in a country where women are banned from driving cars.
They're recently allowed, is the word.
Yeah, recently allowed. So that means in practice, culturally, probably there are many, many women who can't drive, who won't drive or can't drive because there will be still cultural disapproval of it. Obviously, one doesn't change a culture overnight just by simply changing the laws. But when you think of the sheer bonkers, grotesque, ludicrous irony of this country that literally banned women from driving cars, having the most prestigious car racing competition in the world and having a leg of it in their country. I mean, it's a sort of it's almost performance levels of hypocrisy in a way. But that's by the by, I suppose. The Lilian Thuram one's very interesting. It comes across as a sophisticated, sort of intellectual student of the cause he is representing, and not simply just protesting or that. The fact that he's engaging in art and intellectual studies of the whole complexity of it. And of course, it's a reminder again, we don't really know these. Most of the people when we watch in sport, we don't really know them, because all we knew of Lilian Thuram was this absolutely magnificent footballer for France, and then there's this whole other side to him, and this that's emerging, and echoes a little bit for me in how he's dealing with the issue in a great player from another code and a previous generation, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who is an all-time great basketball player, but who himself has now become a sort of cultural critic, writer, documentary filmmaker, and a very, very impressive man in so many ways. And I was getting the same echoes or resonances from that interview Jonathan Northcroft did with Lilian Thuram as well. But we know that, lads, this is a weekly conversation now, racism in sport, and a part of me kind of wonders, like, or thinks, maybe the more pessimistic part of me, that it's almost taboo to say it, but that there'll always be racism. I'm no anthropologist, but humanity, apparently, we sorted ourselves into tribes from as soon as we could walk on 2 feet, and it is so deeply encoded in us, the need to belong to a tribe, a family, and you'd wonder, is it just hardwired into our evolutionary systems to see people from another tribe before we get to know them as somehow a source of threat, a danger, a sort of menace to our survival, and that what we see now in the 21st century is still a hangover from our most primitive selves. And a part of me thinks we've all the legislation and campaigning and all of that is good and very important, and yet it just seems the racism gene seems just incorrigible, unstoppable, just so profoundly embedded that to an extent all of the you wonder sometimes, is all the campaigning, what does it amount to in the end? Does it? Maybe it does work. Maybe there is enlightenment somehow developing and evolving in humanity. But you wonder. Jonathan Norcroft mentions the England game against Hungary, and a part of you also thinks that with all the campaigning against racism, does it incite and goad a certain type of person in the guise of a football supporter or his tribe of football supporters to actually that they're almost goaded into doing the opposite by the sheer weight of campaigning against racism, and that there's some perverse incentive for them to actually then deny that. I don't know, I'm just kind of speculating here.
It's very interesting. I mean, there could absolutely be an anti-establishment aspect to it at times, and no one's going to tell me how to behave. And I mean, what you can't dispute, on Tommy's point, Gav, is that progress feels very slow.
Well, I mean, it would also be news to FIFA, because FIFA, as Thuram's piece reveals, disbanded their anti-racism task force in 2016, claiming, quote, its work was done. So I missed that press release from FIFA to say that they had ended racism and that all was well with the world. But yes, that's an interesting, kind of counter-establishment. And I think you can see that probably with the booing of the taking of the knee, the reactionary line against it is often, we don't want politics in our sport. This should be a politics-free zone. But that's a fiction. It's a part of society, and thus politics encroaches as a result. So I think that's a very, very fair point. But I would and I think obviously people have erected barriers between and walled each other off from each other for centuries. But sport is one of the best vehicles we have to knock down those barriers, and it's far from perfect, but it is as good a vehicle for progress, I think, than most other things that we have.
I don't think Tommy disagrees with that. It's just a sense of where is the progress.
Yeah, and you can't. I mean, the rational answer to that is I'm really not sure. Yeah. I think there's progress in the fact that Marcus Rashford and Raheem Sterling and Gareth Southgate and Jordan Henderson and other people feel empowered to speak out. I think that's definitely progress. Lilian Thuram says, we don't have that in French football yet. So there's progress there, but it's slow and it's painful.
And I guess Thuram is talking, Tommy, not just about sport. He's just talking about day-to-day life here, ultimately.
Yeah, he is, and I'd agree with Gavin. I on the sports thing, and try to avoid being tribal about our allegiances to the thing we love. But I've written it before, and it may be arguable. I'm sure it is arguable, but I don't know if humankind has created a greater meritocracy than sport. That ultimately your family connections or your cultural upbringing or your privileges in life, they won't make you run 2 seconds faster than someone who came from in poverty. The the clock determines, the stats determine your place in the hierarchy in sport. And I love that about it. It is one of the glories of it for me.
Yeah.
That it is the ultimate meritocracy, or as close to a meritocracy as humankind has devised, because it can be objectively and scientifically measured, your ability. And if you have the ability, you will get through the system somewhere.
Yes.
And there is I think that for me is one of the abiding glories of the sporting life. And yet I'm mindful then of Jesse Owens famously in 36. What he did, one could say, against one man against Nazism and fascism, an absolute triumph of human integrity, and yet returns back to America and treated scandalously. And Jackie Robinson in baseball, breaking the color barrier and all like that, and that they returned to Civvy Street and still treated like that. And Lilian Thuram wins a World Cup with France, and Muhammad Ali and Colin Kaepernick, and on it goes. But I guess it's better than nothing. And I love the fact that sport allows the world to compete and the best to come through, no matter what their background.
No, it's a great point. I'm going to shamelessly go from that very profound insight to Seamus Coleman. Did he underachieve, I suppose, is the blunt way of putting this. This is Paul Rowan in the Sunday Times on page 6, ahead of Crystal Palace against Everton. Coleman's preaching belies his lack of ambition. Lack of ambition, I suppose, maybe is the way to put it. So he starts off by saying there's something mildly irritating about the ad with Seamus Coleman and the Irish supermarket regarding healthy eating choices and making the right choices. So, I suppose I could have spent more time messing around, says Coleman, but I didn't. I made a better choice in the ad. And Paul Rowan argues, had Coleman ever won anything in his 12-year career with Everton, it would be easier to excuse the Irish captain being a little preachy. Coleman's probably the most successful present Irish player when it comes to carving out a Premier League career, but that's not really saying a lot. He's an Everton legend, certainly. Says his contribution to Ireland's been immense, and talks about his unstinting, selfless nature. But one still wonders about some of the decisions he has made since he became an established Premier League player. Talks about the interest at one time from Manchester United, rumours of interest even from Bayern Munich. A quote here from Coleman. Not a recent quote, but just a quote from Coleman. There was interest from numerous clubs. I never looked for a way out of Everton, he said a few years ago. Whatever went on between the clubs went on. I've always been happy at Everton. You can look back and people can say you need to push on with things and you need to get to the top. However, Everton took a chance by signing me from Sligo Rovers. Loyalty's not really a thing anymore in football, but I feel Everton have done a lot for me. And Paul Rowan writes that Coleman at 33 reminds me of what Roy Keane said about Stephen Kenny last week. They're doing okay, Keane said, and if okay is fine for everybody else in Ireland, good luck to them. Along the line of top level football, I thought winning was part of the package. Maybe I'm wrong. So he concludes by saying Coleman, he could have been called a genuine winner, the guy who had made the right choices if he had moved on and won silverware, is the point. Sacrilege, Gavin Cooney.
Yeah, you very rarely read criticism of Seamus Coleman, so I find this interesting because I've been thinking about it for quite a while. It probably doesn't give enough context to the fact that he did break his leg in 2017. Wasn't it 2017? I think it was that game against Wales. When he was, I think there were tentative links with Manchester United at that point. Granted, they may have been there prior to that. Has he showed a lack of ambition by staying at Everton? I genuinely do think that Coleman is genuinely old school, and I think he believes in loyalty to Everton. He's a genuine old school pro, and I think he would actually put a lot of stock in that, and it is those old qualities that has made him. He's not Ireland's greatest ever player, or he's not in the top 20 of Ireland's greatest players, but he's legitimately one of our greatest captains, I think. He's conducted himself so well amid a circus around that team for so long, for so many years. Has he showed a lack of ambition in staying at Everton? I'm not sure. Can I sit roundly on the fence?
Get off the fence. Get off the fence.
No, I don't think. I actually don't. I don't think so. To be honest,
why? I'm allowed to sit in the fence. I'm going to play devil's advocate and get in no trouble here. Why shouldn't Seamus Coleman have gone to Manchester United when he was 24, 25 and won the lot, or gone elsewhere at that age and said, Everton, I'll be back in my mid-30s, I love you forever, but I need to win. I need to see just how far I can go in my career. I want to see what I can actually win. I want to play Champions League football. Why not do that?
Yeah, when you put it like that.
Like, where was the loyalty to Sligo Rovers? Why does the loyalty extend to Everton, not Sligo, I wonder?
Yeah, I don't know. I genuinely think that he's just... I think there is a genuine level of loyalty there, and maybe it is absolutely a lack of ambition. That is entirely fair. I don't know. Like, I mean, we're Manchester United. Manchester United also, like, they're not exactly the top of the game either. You know, it would have been David Moyes, Manchester United onwards. Like, that's not an enormous step up. And beyond Everton, Everton have always been the promise of that next rung down. So there's always only ever been a step up into the Champions League. So I would kind of query as to how many genuine opportunities there were to step up. Maybe I'm not aware of some that he did turn down. But I think, maybe it is a lack of ambition, but I think it's a bit harsh on Coleman.
Well, to be fair, it's not to say he hasn't had a wonderful career. You play in the Premier League that long, you've had a wonderful career. You're in the top 1% of Irish sports people ever, because it's such a, Tommy's talking about meritocracy. This is the ultimate meritocracy, Premier League football. Tommy, come on in here.
A bit of a cranky piece from Paul Rowan, I thought, but he can tend to be that way, and I like him all the more for that. There's no harm for someone to have a little poke at a sacred cow, and not to say that Seamus is a sacred cow, that implies that there's some level of hypocrisy or something going on. There's not, but he is universally considered one of the good guys, and there's a lot to be said for that. And an excellent, really excellent footballer, and maybe one of Ireland's, maybe the best full-back Ireland have had in the last 40, 50 years. I'd invite people with better memories than mine now to come in on that. He's been absolutely brilliant for Ireland for so long. He's exceptional pace and resilience, toughness, concentration, guts. He's passing. He's a top quality footballer. I'd have liked to have seen him going to Man United, especially when Moyes. That seems to have been an opening there. Did his agent? Does he even have an agent? And sometimes, if you have a good agent, or at least not a totally mercenary agent, who might say to a client, "Get out of your comfort zone. You can go to a higher level. Come on, move up." And Coleman strikes me as being a homely sort of fella, and he liked. I get the sense that he loves the sense of being part of a community. He's a community fella. He loves that, and he grew up in it in his Donegal. It was Killybegs, wasn't it, or Gavin, or what?
Yeah.
That he
it's almost as if these very admirable qualities held him back from pushing for that move.
Very unusual in elite professional sport for a fella not to go to another level or to show that level of loyalty, because they all know, Coleman included, how absolutely viciously ruthless and cold the business is, and it makes them cold. I think Jerry Flannery said that, did he, to you during the week, Joe, or to someone, and when he was at Arsenal, that there's a coldness, and indeed over the years when you meet serious professional sportsmen, that they have almost been rendered like a cold streak in them, because they know how disposable they are, and not just, and Coleman knows all that, but also the other side of it too. I mean, when he had a dip in form, the Everton fans were the first to turn on him. And that happens an awful lot. I mean, to talk about fans being loyal to their clubs for life and all like that, there's a long dismal litany of examples of great servants of clubs who suffer a dip in form, coming back after an injury, or are just simply gone a little bit too old, and next thing the fans are booing them, as if they have total amnesia as to the service that particular player gave them. And Everton fans were guilty of that too a couple of years ago when Coleman was going through. So maybe he should have moved on. Maybe he should have gone to United and played in Europe and advertised his ability, because he close enough to world class, I would have said.
Yeah. Shane Duffy, by the way, is in the Sunday Times as well, talking to Paul Rowan. So I suppose the most striking thing about the interview is he talked about the Celtic period, and he has talked about how he's got himself into the best shape of his life. I've got myself as strong as I can be to give myself the best chance. I'm the fittest I've been. I have changed my lifestyle. Diet, yes, and I've stayed off the pints. And then he does, I think, realising what he said, he suddenly says, that's not to say I wasn't living very well in the first place, but I've gone to a whole other level, is what he says about his game at the moment in terms of fitness. So he's enjoying life at Brighton and definitely wants Stephen Kenny to stay on. I've never enjoyed football more at international level, so it's about keeping going and keep working, and he definitely thinks Stephen Kenny should get a new contract. So that's a brief synopsis of Shane Duffy talking to Paul Rowan in the Sunday Times. We'll take a short break. We've a couple more stories to get through, and we'll do that in just a moment with Gavin Cooney and Tommy Conlon.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball. News Talk already gives you your daily fix of news and entertainment. But wouldn't you like a little bit more? More? News Talk Extra is everything you might have missed. Plus, expert tips, podcasts and competitions. All straight to your inbox. Subscribe now at newstalk.com/extra.
You're pretty smart, right? Clever, intelligent. You make smart choices. So what car are you sitting in right now? If it's a Skoda, well, you're one of the smartest drivers on the road. And if it's not, we can fix that with one smart decision. Choose a new Skoda from our range right now and get an excellent finance offer. You can even apply online. Drive smarter in a Skoda. Finance provided by way of hire purchase agreement from Volkswagen Financial Services Ireland and subject to lending criteria. Terms and conditions apply. Visit skoda.ie.
Many families will face impossible choices this Christmas. Please support the St Vincent de Paul annual appeal. Donate locally at svp.ie or call 0818 176 176.
This Christmas, let them choose. Choose from the best in Irish-owned or sustainable brands. Choose from luxury fashion, the ultimate in beauty, or world-class homeware design. Choose from an in-store experience or shopping online. Brown Thomas and Arnott's gift cards are now accepted in both stores and won't expire. So purchase a Brown Thomas or Arnott's gift card this Christmas and let them choose.
Now at Power City, get free delivery and free recycling on selected Bosch condenser dryers. For more information, go online to powercity.ie or call in store today.
Let's make Christmas amazing for everyone. At Aldi, we're supporting vulnerable children and families and helping to give them a happy Christmas. With your help, we've raised over €400,000 for Bernardo's already. Choose Bernardo's Christmas cards, Kevin the Carrot toys, or our home cookbook in store, and we'll make a donation on your behalf. Find out how you can help Bernardo's or make a donation at aldi.ie/Bernardo's. Aldi, make Christmas amazing for everyone.
Hi, this is Dara O'Brien. In March of 2020, I was just finishing a tour and I remember saying, God, I wish I had some time off. So yeah, sorry about that, that's my fault. So I've written a new tour so none of this ever happens again. It's called So Where Were We? And I'm doing more dates of it in Vicar Street. So come along, it'll feel like being normal again. Plus, I ate a bat, so my bad.
Dara O'Brien, Vicar Street, March 31st, April 1st, 2nd and 6th to 9th. Tickets €36, on sale now from Ticketmaster and usual outlets nationwide.
From Mallinhead to Hookhead and all points in between, Ireland's makers have been creating beautiful gifts that will show everyone you love that you care. To discover Irish craft gifts near you, visit madelocal.ie. Supported by Design and Crafts Council Ireland.
That feeling is back. Live horse racing has returned to Leopardstown, which means you can be trackside again, enjoying the kind of crack that only a day at the races can bring. And of course, the thrill of the final stretch. Get into live horse racing again. For a full list of race meetings and to get tickets, visit leopardstown.com. Horse Racing Ireland, for every racing moment.
The stage is set for all the drama of the Champions Cup.
The sparkly showpiece of the club rugby season.
Watch every match live on BT Sport this season when you get Sky Sports and Sports Extra, now half price for 6 months. The players are ready. Are you? Get Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports half price for 6 months with Sky. Search Sky Sports Sale to join or upgrade now. New Sports customers only. Standard pricing applies after 6 months. Further terms apply.
When we think of fundraising, we tend not to think of Facebook, when in fact social media often plays a crucial role. more than 27 million people in Europe have created or donated to Facebook fundraisers, and many more are active in Facebook groups to support causes they care about. In Portugal, Facebook group Vamos Ajuda ao Diogo use Facebook to help fund treatment and drive awareness of FOXP1, a rare genetic disease. Learn more about how fundraising in Europe is happening on Facebook at about.fb.com/IE/Europe.
Gavin Tullamore this Christmas, Ireland's destination menswear store. Gavin Tullamore.
You can now apply for, renew and update your learner permit or driving licence online at ndls.ie. It's quick and simple to apply online. No paper, no forms, no fuss. And you can apply up to 3 months before your licence expires. Your learner permit or driving licence is now just a click away. All you need is a verified MyGov ID to securely apply at ndls.ie. A message from the National Driver Licence Service and the Road Safety Authority.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
You're welcome back. Sunday Paper Review. It's Joe Malloy here, Gavin Cooney here, and Tommy Conlon of the Sunday Independent is with us as well. Tommy, we're watching an extraordinary final lap to the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Max Verstappen has overtaken Lewis Hamilton, I think, on the last lap.
Yeah.
Hamilton is now trying to have a go at him again. As things stand, apologies, I have the radio the commentary up here, but this calls for it. We're in lap 58 of 58. Max Verstappen has just overtaken Lewis Hamilton at the death. He's 1.3 seconds ahead, and I would think uncatchable at this stage on the final lap. I didn't see the overtaking. He's on the home straight. We're seeing the checkered flag waved. Max Verstappen's crossed the line in first place. I'm struggling just to fully confirm this because I can't believe what I'm seeing. Max Verstappen confirmed winner of the 2021 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. He is the 2021 world champion. This had looked like a non-event for the last 10-15 laps. The safety car was certainly out in the last, I don't know how many laps, certainly the last 5-10 minutes. I've noticed the safety car has been out and they've been doing their thing. And whatever's happened at the death, Max Verstappen has overtaken Lewis Hamilton. He is the 2021 world champion. We'll get a look at this again. Absolutely extraordinary. This is just kind of the fitting end to a roller coaster championship, Gav. That is absolutely ridiculous.
Not to let too much light in upon Magic listener, but during the break, I took a half a glance at this and said to Joe that, God, this is a bit of a damp squib, isn't it? And then I realised that there had been some kind of safety car of some kind on the track, and it had shrunk the pack, and then all of a sudden, so Max Verstappen swing around Lewis Hamilton and come home almost just about a second clear to win the championship, having overtaken Lewis Hamilton on the last lap of the last race of the season. I mean,
there you go.
it's a fitting end to one of the most extraordinary years in that sport's history.
Red Bull team going ballistic, and Toto is looking fairly ashen-faced at the moment. So Verstappen's doing his victory lap, and that's an incredible finish. So Max Verstappen is the world champion 2021. Back to the papers. Tommy Conlon, you've gone at one sacred cow. Let's keep the ball rolling here. Let's just, you've decried humanity and the inherent racism, and we've had Seamus Coleman talk, and now anthems. What could go wrong here? So God Save the Queen is not a song that inspires togetherness. Sports should be built for future. This is I didn't see this documentary. This went out on UTV on Tuesday, A Game at Two Halves. Mick Foley is writing about this, and you know, we had the likes of Jerry Armstrong from West Belfast and his friend Billy Hamilton from East, remembering their times together and how there were such celebrations across the board when Northern Ireland did great things. I'm very proud to say I was part of a team that brought the community together, said Hamilton, even for just a while. And then there's a fan, Graham Kenny, devoted Northern Irish fan, lived through the decades when Windsor Park was decorated in Union Jacks, and Billy Boys was a high point of every set list. Now the supporters get more mileage from Sweet Caroline than anything. And Kenny unfurls a giant green and white flag. He says you have to move with the times. But there was a limit. For many people, God Save the Queen as Northern Ireland's anthem is a curious remnant, writes Mick Foley, from a time when the flags, the songs, symbolism of the football team was an abhorrence to half the community. For Kenny, changing flags was fine, no problem. Making the supporters' songbook less intimidating, no problem either. The anthem, though, well, he says, that's something very special. The fans hold it dear to their heart. Changing an anthem, it's like taking a part of Northern Ireland away from us, from our identity. So it's absolutely a big no to changing the anthem. Arlene Foster must have been quoted in this documentary as well. She said that any discomfort about the use of God Save the Queen was overblown, something people latch onto as an issue because they want to make it an issue. And Michael O'Neill, interviewed as well, former manager. I could see how other countries would display real patriotism and real togetherness during their anthem, real emotion. We never got that. And O'Neill did what he could to try and improve the situation. Players who traditionally bowed their head during God Save the Queen were gently persuaded to raise them. But it's a thorny subject. Tommy, what struck you about this piece or about the issue?
Yeah, I suppose we should clarify, Joe, in case we haven't already, that the Kenny being referred to is not Stephen Kenny.
No, it's a fan. It's a fan. Yeah, it's
a chap called Graham Kenny.
Graham Kenny. He's the one who unfurled his, the green and white flags and talked about how he was happy to make the song set list less divisive. But when it came to the anthem, for a fan like Graham Kenny, absolutely not. So he was just one example of that.
Yeah. The old anthem has been a bugbear of mine. At GEA games. And in recent years, I've taken to not bothering standing up for the national anthem. Apart maybe from the All-Ireland finals, if I'm in Croke Park and I'm sitting down, I will stand up for the All-Ireland, for the national anthems, the All-Ireland finals. But at this stage of my life, I've heard the national anthem far too many times. And at every GEA dogfight it's played. And it has been totally devalued, I think, and kind of cheapened into abstraction almost, where you don't even listen to it being played when it's being played. And it's a thing of going through the motions, like up and down Ireland, weekend in, weekend out. Some scratchy version of it played on the tannoy, and people stand together and do a bit of muttering and shuffling, and then the game starts, and it's become a totally devalued ritual by the sheer overexposure of it, I think, and that's only at the GEA level. I mean, more broadly, personally, I couldn't care less about flags or anthems myself, and I was heartened when Egon O'Farrell, who Mick Foley quotes in his piece, the former GA president, talked about it. I guess he just put it out there, floated the idea that maybe we should ease back on the use of the tricolour and national anthem. And I'd be in agreement with that.
In O'Farrell's case, just to clarify, his argument was less about overuse and therefore cheapening, which is your point. He was arguing that it alienated, those who might see it as, the trappings of nationalist Catholic old Ireland. Your point is slightly different, but ultimately amounts to the same conclusion that it's overdone. Gavin Cooney?
I would add that I also feel that the national anthem has been cheapened by the fact that it used to come on when the lights come up at the end of rural club nights around the country back in our previous life. It's an interesting point, like Egon O'Farrell makes, that is it alienating? Like, it's an interesting piece by Mick Foley because it begins by segueing in with God Save the Queen, and Mick's point is effectively that if it alienates, it should be changed. Michael O'Neill managed to convince those Northern Ireland internationals who did not stand to attention for it to link arms with their teammates and to at least not bow their heads. And there's an interesting, a nice quote that Mick digs up from Nelson Mandela: "To let go is not to deny, but to accept." So it is. It's a very interesting column. It's certainly an interesting talking point.
What about Tommy's point that it's been overused and therefore cheapened at every single GA match over the tannoy?
In fairness, I don't agree that it has been cheapened by overuse. I think the debate to be had is whether it's alienating to people in the north particularly.
And where are you on that debate then?
If it is alienating to people, then I would get rid of it, because as we talked about earlier on, in terms of sport being a meritocracy and the ability to unite, we talked about earlier on in the show, we were talking about barriers being erected to people and sport being the best vehicle to knock them down. If it is alienating to people, I know people will say that this is, the GA is part of our culture and it's intersected with that. My own personal opinion is, if people have an issue with it and the sport and the GA can stand for in the 21st century should stand for something else, I would end it.
Joe,
yes, Tommy.
It should be acknowledged. Like, people, this kind of what the likes of me is saying comes across. Really, I'm very conscious of sounding almost like the stereotypical superior liberal media type, you know, and people's identity is very important to them, and my own is important to me. But I guess I would be guilty of underestimating that and maybe not respecting it enough. And what that chap Graham Kenny says about, he is making his gestures, like by unfurling the giant green and white flag, and you have to move with the times, he says. And then comes to the question of God Save the Queen, and he says it's something very special the fans hold dear to their heart. Changing an anthem is like taking a part away from our identity, and it goes back to that thing of feeling the need to belong to your tribe, to your people, and I probably sounded condescending about that. I shouldn't be condescending because it is very important to people and that, but I guess we should acknowledge too.
I think what you've done there. I think what you've done there on the anthem front is, to be fair, been very honest. And there's not enough honesty in public discourse, and then you've thought about it and said, well, I can see how other people won't like that point of view, and acknowledge that as well, which is kind of how we have to have discussions about these things, no?
I hope so, and I should be more conscious of that myself and seeing the other side as well. And I read a very good book a few years ago by an English commentator called David Goodhart, I think, about that whole thing of, in the kind of currently metropolitan or cosmopolitan sort of liberal sort of mindset, that it does a disservice to people who feel rooted to their communities, to where they're from, to being from somewhere, to their own people, to their tribe. And that we speak down to those people too often. Like some of us, myself, I suppose, in this case, vis-a-vis the flags and anthems, and to respect that and not underestimate how important it is.
Because I think on the anthem point, I do take your point. Look, we're also in the position quite often, if you're a jobbing journalist and you're at lots of games, it can become tiresome and repetitive, and now here's the tannoy again, and it doesn't feel like a particularly special occasion, and here's the anthem again, and do I get up, do I not get up? But I think if you put yourself in the position of the supporters of a certain county or the players of a certain county who may realistically have one, if not two, outings across an entire championship year, this is their one chance as the GAA community to come together and to enjoy the anthem and acknowledge the anthem, and it's a sense of unity, and they might have 1 to 2 matches a year. I guess if you're the Dubs and it's like, here we go, another day, this is quarterfinal, semi-final, not too sure, play the anthem, off we go. But for those pockets around the country where that's not the case, I think it would be a massive wrench, and they would struggle to understand, God, why are we not playing the anthem? This is our only match in Ennis the entire year. Of course we're going to bloody play our anthem, and that's a part of what the GAA is about. So I think on the overuse point, I would disagree with you. On the aspect to the extent to which it's alienating, I think O'Farrell was roundly shot down, I would presume, when he flew that kite. But if it is alienating, we can't very well talk about God Save the Queen and not talk about the anthem if we're proposing to be 32 counties and beyond.
I think so, and I think that's what Mick has done a very good job in this piece of bringing that in. The easy thing would have just been to write about God Save the Queen.
Aren't they terrible up there?
And write about it from the more nationalist leaning or Republic of Ireland leaning footballers who play for Northern Ireland. But I think anyone reading that,
they say the nationalists down here reading that would be like, they should get rid. It is alienating. Get rid of God Save the Queen, and then suddenly at the end to be sucker punched with, well, we do play Aaron Bean for the GAA counties up there. Yeah, you can see. Well, now I understand why God Save the Queen is maybe more difficult for some to give up.
Yeah, and look, the question, like Mick doesn't answer the question, and I don't blame him for not even attempting to. Is what you replace it with? I have God Save the Queen or Aaron Bean.
Oh, to joy, perhaps.
I mean, maybe. I mean, Ireland's call maybe is not had the desired effect. Maybe it has.
Dolan canon.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what you replace it with. That's the difficult thing. Where is Ireland's call now? Have we come to love it in its own mysterious way, Tommy?
Love might be a bit of
Look, if you're not standing for the anthem some weeks, you're definitely not standing for Ireland's call, I presume.
What about something from the Joe Dolan canon of songs? Is there anything there that might work on the national level? But you know what? Phil Coulter's masterpiece. We've just got used to it, haven't we?
Well, I think so. And I think increasingly if you start to associate it with good famous Irish days, then there's a Pavlov's dog effect eventually. You know,
the problem with the Rosa Tralee tune is that they ascribed it to the 1980s Ireland rugby team of Willie Anderson and so, which just wasn't successful.
The
so maybe
opening match of the 1987 World Cup, they realised they didn't have an anthem, and so that was the only cassette tape they had.
So maybe if they repurpose that for our more successful teams, maybe we'll.
On a serious note, though, that I mean, trying to come up with a replacement is every bit as difficult as the first intimation that a replacement might be required. I mean, how you come up with something that everybody thinks, God, that's the one, that's a winner, and it's near impossible.
But the problem is, like, no one will agree. I mean, it's and regardless of, like, it's not a comment on the musical quality of the song. Like, I mean, no one will agree because it's so contested. So I don't really know where you go with that, to be honest. But it's a very good piece that's very worth reading because it'll raise all those questions even if it doesn't have the answers.
We're not going to get to everything naturally enough, which tends to be just to mention, we don't have to discuss this because I think this is just something we all assume, but the graphic makes the layout of the piece on agents is just very, very good, where in effect Nick Harris, who often does very good special reports for the Mail and comes at things a bit differently, he has just been looking at the fees to agents. In effect, FIFA have said, right, this has gone beyond a joke, we need to cap agents' fees. And so on at least 10 occasions, 10 times in recent years, football agents have been paid at least 10 million for his or her role in moving a player between one European club and another. And then there have been a whole bunch of 5 million commissions. And it's just the graphs which will catch the eye. So the Paul Pogba move from Juventus to Manchester United back in August 2016, the transfer fee there was 90 million sterling. Mino Raiola got 41 million sterling. He got 20 million from Juventus, he got 17 million from United, he got 2 million from Pogba. So he got 40 million. Now, under the new rules FIFA are proposing, that 40 million would be down to 8.9 million. Gareth Bale's move from Spurs to Real Madrid, agent there, David Manasia, he got 13 million. We have Christian Pulisic from Dortmund to Chelsea just 2 years ago. The transfer fee was 57 million. His agent got 10 million. Philip Coutinho's agent got 10 million for the move to Barcelona, and then to get Cristiano Ronaldo from Real Madrid to Juventus, Jorge Mendes got 10 million. So FIFA are looking at this saying it is Wild West territory, we need to clean this.
And the issue is not necessarily depriving these men of their money. They probably have enough, but the issue is that the money is going in their pockets and not being distributed to clubs which produce these players. So figures from 2019, the global spend on transfers that year was around £5.5 billion. Agents' fees around that came to £550 million, and the compensation to the clubs that actually produce these players was around £55 million, so 10% of what the agents are getting.
Tommy, just a last story which really caught the eye. Dermot Crowe dives deep on this, and it's very, very interesting. So in short here, and again, I mean, this is tied up with identity and our territory and their territory and all that kind of stuff. Ballygunner, who are doing great things at the moment at club level, at senior level. Ballygunner in Waterford, GAA club, doing very well, have great facilities by all accounts. There's a local soccer club there, Bohemians, and Bohemians soccer players aged between 4 to 10 trained once a week on Saturday mornings for an hour on the Ballygunner facilities. There's an indoor Astro pitch, and technically that's not allowed. So Croke Park, obviously in 2005 changed the rules and allowed Rule 42 and all that, and allowed quote unquote foreign sports. I don't think that's the technical term, but other sports into Croke Park. But the rule is very much still that when it comes to club facilities, thou shalt not pass. This is GAA only. So Dermot Crowe writes here, the GAA's rule on prohibiting the use of its property for non-GAA activity allows for no exceptions to be made at club level. Now, enforcement of this rule is lax. Like so many of the great GAA traditions, there are no under-the-counter payments, etc. The reality is, and I dare say if you're listening, your GAA club may well be used for non-GAA activities. What seems to have happened here is that an anonymous complaint was made to Croke Park. And once Croke Park heard about it, then they had to act. And so Bohemians Football Club were told your 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds can't train here anymore. Bohemian Secretary Ian Barrett is quoted to, he said, this is just something we do for the winter months. Ballygunner were quite happy to rent it out. It was money for them. It was great for us. He said, we have sympathy for Ballygunner. They had no option but to adhere to the rules. We are both victims of this rule. The biggest victims are the kids, is what he says. And naturally enough, there's lots of people who, in the piece, would love to know who made the complaint to GAA and what their motivation was to headquarters. The sad thing is, someone saw fit to complain and deprive the kids the chance to train indoors. These are the same kids that will be training outdoors with the hurling come March and April. And there's a reference as well to that situation in Donegal in 2019 when there was a charity match for somebody in the community who was very ill, and it happened on a GAA pitch, and the club were banned for, I think it was 8 weeks from all activity. So this is not a unique case in Ballygunner. So, Tommy, thoughts on that? The sense Dermot Crowe has is this rule has to change very, very soon, and will change very, very soon. We're just waiting for it to change, because the reality on the ground is that clubs up and down the country are renting out their facilities, it seems.
Yeah, and actually there's loads of good detail in Dermot's pieces, and yet there are actually questions like, who was this? Who is this mysterious Scarlet Pimpernel who reported Ballygunner to the GAA and to Croke Park? And intriguingly, Dermot says here, I think in the second or third paragraph, when contacted, Croke Park denied any knowledge or having had any part in the sequence of events. And so Ballygunner are saying that their hands were tied by some local patriot who decided to report them to Croke Park, and yet Croke Park seems to know nothing about it.
Yeah.
And there's questions there, like who was this person, and what exactly? How compelled were Ballygunner? I mean, to take the decision they did to ban the Bohemians kids from training on the pitch. Like, if the complainant is unknown, and if Croke Park apparently says they know nothing about it, it's all kind of fallen into a bit of a Bermuda Triangle. Yes. And he quotes, Dermot Crowe quotes Andy Maloney here, of the former Waterford hurler, saying, "I would love to know who was the complainant, and if was their name attached to it, or was it anonymous? And in my view, if it was done anonymously, I think it should be disregarded. Put your name to it, and then have the gumption to stand over it." And you'd wonder, like, how powerful was the objection that Ballygunner felt compelled to back off and not even remedy the situation, other than to just turn around and say to the Bohemian Soccer Club, "Oh, your kids can't train here anymore." I think Ballygunner have a few questions to answer about it.
Yeah, well, we're out of time. We'll see how that all continues to transpire over the coming weeks. Maybe there'll be some solution found, but we are out of time. Gavin Cooney from the 42, thanks so much for coming in.
Cheers.
And Tommy Conlon of the Sunday Independent, appreciate it. Tommy, thank you.
Pleasure, Joe. Thank you.
The Sunday Papers on Off the